Hi, it's Miss M, and today we're going to be practicing solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. Very similar to what we did in the last video last week, but these ones are going to be a little bit more complicated. So let's just get straight into it. We've got our first question, and it is x squared plus 2x plus 8 equals 0. Okay, so with quadratic equations, remember we can solve them by factoring, by the isolation method, or with the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula is the way that works if nothing else works. So let's go ahead and we've already got this equal to 0. So let's go ahead and sign our variables. A, B, C. A is 1, B is 2, and C is 8. Okay, now if you wanted to solve this by factoring, we can always check to see if that's an option. So remember, if we solve by factoring, we do the diamond method. The top, this right here is A times C, that's 1 times 8, which is 8. And down here would be 2. Okay, so if I take a look at this, well, I can't get anything that would give me 8 if they're multiplied together and 2 if they're added together. It's because like 2 times 4 is 8, but I can't deal with that and get 2. So nope, this cannot be factored, which means that it's going to have a root in the answer. So we have to use our quadratic equation or our quadratic formula. So remember, the quadratic formula is x equals a negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and you should always sing it when you write it because I promise it really does help you remember it. So now all we do is we take our letters that we have over here and we plug them into our quadratic formula. So we have x, I'm going to move it over here, x equals negative b, or opposite b. B is 2, so the opposite of b is negative 2, plus or minus square root of b squared, b was 2, squared, minus 4ac, 4 times 1 times 8. And remember, we use these parentheses to represent multiplying, all over 2 times a. Okay, now we're going to simplify the thing inside of the root. And if you watched the last video, you know that that is called the discriminant. So we're going to simplify the discriminant. X equals negative 2 plus or minus square root. 2 squared is 4, minus 4 times 1 times 8 is 32. So we have 4 minus 32 all over 2. X equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 28 all over 2. Now this number is our discriminant, that we have a negative 28. That tells me that my answer is going to be imaginary and I'm going to have 2 imaginary solutions. So I already know that that's what I'm looking for in my answer based on this. Now with my negative 28, I need to simplify this. So I'm going to make a prime tree. Negative 28. Whenever we do a prime tree with a negative number, first step is always take out that negative. So I have negative 1 and 28. 28 is 4 times 7. 7 is a prime number. And 4 is 2 times 2. Okay, and then that. So we have those 4 numbers circled. So we have x equals negative 2 plus or minus square root. The product of the primes is a negative 1 times 2 times 2 times 7. All over 2. Okay, now our negative 1 is going to come out as an I, and we circle our pairs, so we have 2 2s, so that's going to come out as well. So that means we're going to write x equals negative 2 plus or minus 2i root 7. The 7 is a leftover. It's still inside of that root. So remember, leftovers go in things, or they stay in things. So it stays inside of the root, all over 2. Okay, so I've got my root as simplified as it can be. which means my next step is to simplify the numbers outside of the root. I have 3 2's, meaning they can all be divided by 2. Remember, that's where we draw this triangle. Everything inside the triangle can be divided by 2. So that would simplify to x equals -1 plus or minus 1, but I don't need to write it because it's being multiplied. So I would just write I root 7 all over 1, which again, I don't need to write. And if you'll notice, I have -1 plus I root 7 and -1 minus I root 7. So this exactly matches what my discriminant predicted. I have 2 imaginary solutions. Okay, next example. We just have one more example today. 4x squared plus 9 equals 0. Okay, now at first glance, this might look like a difference of squares, but it's not, because the difference of squares, this has to be a negative. 4x squared minus 9 would be difference of squares, but this is a plus, so we can't do that. It can't be factored. And also, it could be solved by the isolation method, but since right here we're focusing on using the quadratic formula, that's what we're going to do. A, B, C. A equals 4, B equals 0, C equals 9. Okay, so here we go. X equals a negative B plus or minus square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So then we plug in our numbers for our variables, and we say X equals -0, which is just 0, plus or minus square root of 0 squared. Notice I still put it in parentheses. Always put your B in parentheses right there. Minus 4 times 4 times 9. All over 2 times 4. Okay, so now I get X equals 0. I don't need to rewrite because it's 0. So I can just say plus or minus the square root. 0 squared is 0. Minus 4 times 4 times 9 is 144. All over 8. That's the same thing as saying plus or minus the square root of negative 144 over 8. So now what I need to do, I've got this number inside of my square root. I need to simplify it. Negative 144. Well, if I take the negative 1 out, I'm left with 144. And 144 is 12 times 12, which means that it is a perfect square, which means that I can take 12 and 12 out. But if you don't remember that it's a perfect square, that's fine. Let's just do the rest of this prime tree. 12 is 2 times 6. 2 is prime. 6 is 2 times 3. 12 you could even say is 3 times 4. There's a 3, and it's 2 times 2. Notice that no matter what way I split it up, I always end up with the same prime numbers. So then I would say, okay, 2, 2, 2, 2. Oh, I've got my -1 also. -1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3. This is going to come out as an I, pair, 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 2, 2, 3, which would be I times 2 times 2 times 3. 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12, I. So that would be 12I. Okay, so that's if you don't remember that it is a perfect square. If you do, though, you can see over here, x equals plus or minus. You see the negative, you know that comes out as an I, and you know that 144 is 12 squared. You could just write 12I over 8. Now we need to simplify. 12 and 8 are both divisible by 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So the answer would be plus or minus 3i over 2. And that is it for this week's videos, and I will see you all next week.